The afternoon sunlight streamed through the large glass windows of Ridgefield Market, casting soft glows across tile floors in the racks of fresh produce. It was a Tuesday like any other in the city of Montrose, quiet, predictable, steady. The hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional beep of a scanner filled the air, mixing with faint overhead pop music. Most shoppers meandered through the aisles, oblivious to anything beyond their own baskets. Camille Norris had no reason to believe today would be any different. She wasn't wearing a uniform. No medals pinned to her chest, no commanding presence marked by rank or title. Just a simple white t-shirt tucked into well-worn jeans, hair pulled into a clean, low bun. Her sneakers were faded, the kind bought for utility rather than style. She had come for bottled water and a few cans of soup, nothing that suggested what was about to unfold. To anyone watching, she was just another customer. Yet everything about Camille, her posture, her calm demeanor, the deliberate rhythm in her steps, told the story of someone trained to face chaos and not flinch. For 2 decades, she had served as a U.S. Army officer. Tours in Kandahar, Mosul, and Ramadi had hardened her instincts. Even in retirement, her inner clock woke her at 5:45 every morning. She still folded her sheets with military precision. She still scanned every room she entered. And she still wore her old watch, a scratched, faded timepiece from her second deployment, as a reminder of every second she'd earned. At the opposite end of the store, another figure entered, Officer Garrett Finch. A local police officer with a reputation for command and confidence walked in through the north entrance. His navy blue uniform hugged his muscular frame tightly. At 6'3", with the presence of a man used to owning every room he stepped into, he didn't just walk through the store, he took up space. His duty belt clinked with every step: radio, baton, cuffs, pepper spray, and a holstered sidearm. Though he was off duty today, his mannerisms betrayed the fact that he never really took the badge off. Garrett's eyes swept the store, not to find an item, but to establish presence. He nodded at a young clerk by the bakery. The clerk smiled nervously. Garrett didn't return the smile, just a curt head nod that said, "I see you." His boots echoed down the tile aisle as he moved toward the beverage section. He reached for a soda can with a swift, uncaring motion, too quick, too rough. It slipped from his grasp, clattering to the floor, dinning as it rolled across the aisle. It spun past a display of chips under a shelf and finally came to rest near Camille's left foot. Camille had seen it all happen. She hadn't flinched, hadn't reacted, just observed. Years of training had sharpened her senses to every minor disruption. As the can settled, she stepped forward and picked it up. Her eyes briefly scanned the aisle. She saw the officer walking away, not even glancing back. Along with the can, a packet of instant noodles had also been dislodged and lay torn on the floor behind him. He hadn't noticed, or maybe he had and simply didn't care. Camille stood silently for a second longer, staring at the fallen items. The moment wasn't about spilled groceries. It was about what the carelessness represented. She had spent her career drilling soldiers on discipline, respect, accountability. She had taught young recruits that how you treat the small things says everything about how you treat people. If you can't fold a blanket, you can't lead a squad, she'd often say. And now, in a grocery aisle in Montrose, she saw that same careless disregard, the kind she'd fought against her whole life, manifested not in a war zone, but in a supermarket. She picked up the noodles gently and walked toward Garrett. "Excuse me," she said, her tone calm and direct, holding out the ramen pack. "You dropped this." Garrett turned, slowly, his face shifting from mild surprise to barely masked contempt. His eyes ran over her, not in curiosity, but in challenge. "And who the hell do you think you are?" he sneered. "Some lady trying to lecture a cop?" Camille didn't answer. She placed the noodle pack gently on the shelf beside him and stepped back, her gaze steady. "I'm just reminding someone about a small thing," she replied, "before it becomes a big one." The silence that followed was sharp. The air grew heavy. Shoppers continued to move through the store, oblivious. But those close enough to hear paused. A woman near the fruits section glanced their way. A father pushing a stroller slowed, but didn't stop. Garrett narrowed his eyes, his tone sharpening. "You think you can talk to me like that?" Still, Camille remained composed. "I think everyone should clean up after themselves," she said. "Whether they wear a uniform or not." It was a simple statement, but to Garrett, it was provocation. "You must be ex-military," he said, voice dripping with derision. "All this discipline stuff. You get bored and decide to start policing the police." Camille's eyes didn't waver. "I spent 20 years serving this country," she said. "Not to be silent when something's wrong." Garrett leaned closer, just enough to breach the invisible space that separates civility from confrontation. "You don't know who you're messing with," he said, lowering his voice. "People like you should know their place." That phrase, the tone, the insinuation, the venom, didn't shock Camille. She had heard it before. In war rooms, in courtrooms, in places where rank mattered more than right. But each time, she had chosen not to let it define her. She simply stared back, unflinching, and Garrett, not getting the reaction he expected, raised his voice. "She's trying to make a scene," he declared loudly to the aisle. "Filming people, accusing cops." Camille didn't even have her phone out. But his words weren't for her. They were for the crowd. He wanted witnesses, but only on his terms. A young woman in a pink sweatshirt nearby pulled out her phone and began recording silently. Others followed. The silence of the aisle changed. It was no longer ignorance, it was observation. Every movement now mattered. "You think you're some kind of hero?" Garrett spat. "No," Camille answered quietly. "I just believe in accountability." Then Garrett reached for her phone. The movement was fast, aggressive. He grabbed it out of her hand. Gasps echoed from nearby. Someone shouted, "Hey!" Another voice, farther back, said, "I saw that." In the scuffle, Camille stumbled backward into a display. Cans fell. A glass bottle shattered on the floor. People rushed in, not to help, but to witness. Garrett stood frozen for a second, realizing what he'd done. His hand hovered near his waist, dangerously close to his weapon. Camille, regaining her balance, said nothing. A man near the deli counter raised his voice. He pushed her. "I got it on video." Another customer nodded. "Me too." He grabbed her phone first. Camille picked up her device, screen cracked but functional. She called 911. "This is Camille Norris at Ridgefield Market," she said calmly. "I've just been assaulted by an off-duty officer. There are multiple witnesses and video evidence." Garrett backed away. His confidence cracked. Moments later, Internal Affairs arrived. Mayor Bennett showed up 20 minutes after that. He'd been alerted by the flood of live posts and messages. Standing in the very aisle where it all happened, he looked Garrett in the eye. "You're suspended, effective immediately," the mayor said. "This is going to the Civil Oversight Board." Garrett tried to speak. "She provoked me," but no one believed him anymore. The pink-haired girl turned her phone toward the mayor. "I've got it all, start to finish." The mayor nodded at her, then looked at Camille. "We got your call. But the truth? It reached us before the line connected." Camille didn't smile. She didn't cry. She simply stood. A few days later, when the news broke, the story was everywhere. Videos, commentary, think pieces. People debated what would have happened had there been no camera, no crowd. Would Camille have been arrested? Silenced? The answer was clear. And Camille? She didn't do interviews. She didn't write op-eds. She returned to teaching legal literacy at a community center. She started each class the same way. Silence feels safe. But sometimes, the most dangerous thing is pretending not to see. The supermarket incident wasn't just about one cop. It was about power, about who gets to use it, and who must answer for it. And Camille Norris, with nothing but a pack of noodles and an unwavering gaze, reminded a city, and eventually, a nation, that silence can be broken, even in the quietest aisle of a grocery store.